Welcome to Mentoring Unlocked, hosted by Maud Lindley, founder of Serendis Leadership and Mentor Key, the platform making mentoring impactful and elevating workplace development conversations. Maud is a renowned executive coach and leadership strategist with over 2 decades of experience, helping leaders unlock their full potential through adaptive leadership and meaningful mentoring. Tune in for personal mentoring stories, expert insights, practical tools, and bold conversations. Whether you're a mentor, mentee, or a culture shaper, there's something for you.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So today we're joined by Jeff McKenzie, Sales Director for Australia and New Zealand at Lindt. Now, Jeff, I told you that the most favorite thing in my life, the thing that I could never give up, is chocolate. So I'm particularly excited to hear about your career and particularly what led you to such a fantastic organization as Lindt. And we'll talk a lot about mentoring, of course, but over your career that has spanned 2 decades already, you've had 16 years at Pernod Ricard winemakers, and you've not only just built leadership legacy, but you've also invested deeply in mentoring for the next generation, and notably through the Drinks Association mentoring program. And that's how we got to know each other. You've been working with my colleagues as really a founding sponsor of this Drinks mentoring program that has now gone on for several years and from success to success. So I'm really keen to hear how mentoring has played a role in your career, but also how you've decided to give back at some point in your career. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Maud. Great to be here. And yeah, looking forward to spending some time with you talking around my mentoring journey as well. And also a little bit about, tips, tricks and everything I've learned along the way.
And chocolate, hopefully.
Well, certainly about chocolate. I mean, let's start from there. So I work for Lindt Sprüngli.
Yeah.
It's a Swiss company. I've been there for 2.5 years. I'm very much enjoying it. I spent 16 years at Pernod Ricard before that in numerous commercial roles, and now sales director ANZ for Lindt. And it's been an amazing journey for me. Certainly the last 2.5 years, I feel like I'm in this relearning, redevelopment mode for myself,
right,
as a leader, not just a new business, but also for myself personally. And certainly looking back, it's a very different business to Pernod Ricard. But I'll take a step back from sort of how I got to this point.
Tell me about what led you to sales roles and what is currently really enticing you in this career. What are you excited about in your career currently?
Great. I'll take a step back to when I finished high school. I actually wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I started a degree in human resource management.
Oh, I see. That's a surprise. I didn't know that.
So at the time, very young, not sure what I wanted to do with myself, and so that sounded interesting. I loved talking to people back then, I think, and I reflect as far back as then, I think quite humanistic in nature, and so started a degree in HR, and that was great. And I learned a lot about, all of the different, personnel and human resource management. And funnily enough, I actually left university and started in an HR role with Streets Ice Cream.
Oh, ice cream.
So what I realized very quickly, though, that I don't think I was very good at HR. And so I then sort of found my way over into sales. And I think that's where I really found my passion and people.
People more than HR.
Yeah, but the discipline in learning for me around, the degree that I picked up in HR, and I did some dabbling in psychology there at the same time.
Yes.
So I have a fascination with people at the heart of everything. And
Right.
so while HR wasn't for me, and then I moved into sales, and that's where my journey began. And so through various commercial roles, I'm at this point now. So I've got a lot to be grateful for, not just for the degree, but I think, some of the choices and maybe some of the good fortune I've had along the way have led to me to this point right now.
And right now it's about teams. I guess you're the head of sales across Australia and New Zealand. But tell me about the people relationship in a sales role. Like when you grew up through the ranks as a salesperson, what makes you a fantastic salesperson these days?
Yeah, great question. Sales I think has evolved enormously from what it classically was, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and it continues to do so today. I still think at the heart of sales is the human and its people and its relationships. So while I have the good fortune of selling chocolate for an amazing business, at the same time, we're a people-based business. And so we have great people, it's built on relationships. And I still think that the foundations of the business are built in the culture and the values. And so whether you're in sales or marketing or finance or any of the important functions in the business, you come back to its people. And so I think more importantly than ever in sales, we've got to have relationships and build partnerships with our customers and our stakeholders. And so I've always really enjoyed that part. It's not always easy, but I've always found that if you can find the magic and sort of that real sweet spot, I just find you can have great partnerships.
The magic in that depth of the relationship.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's understanding people.
Yeah. Well, it's just, again, it's like our personal relationships or relationships outside of the business world.
Yeah.
They're all very different. And so I also find the work ones and the ones with our customers, partners, our staff, all have a very different nature, different light and shade to all of those. And that's what I find fascinating.
So Jeff, tell me, has there been any fundamental mentors for you throughout your career? How has mentoring helped your career development?
Mentoring is an important part of my life, and I will say personally for my children, but more important or as importantly for my career. And that's been a real evolution for me in a journey. But as far as some key mentors for me, I'll tell you one story. I had back when, about 15 years ago, I had the very good fortune at Pernod Ricard, I was provided a mentor. And
so it was a structured one. It was
a structured one. And the great benefit of that was I got to choose them. And they weren't given to me. I got to interview a number of mentors to be a mentee. And so that was probably the start of my journey. And I was very fortunate to be paired with a gentleman called Sonny Williams. So Sonny, if you're out there and if you happen to listen to this,
Sonny's
thank you. He got to me at a very formative time in my career. I was, I'll call it a young up-and-comer, full of fire and brimstone in that company. And what I really look back on now is he helped to straighten me up, I would call it, from a career perspective. So he just helped me to understand what was really important in my career and how to take positive and deliberate next steps in my career. Because before that, it was a little bit more opportunistic, not as deliberate. And so someone to help shape my thinking and my perspective, I think put me on the path to where I am today, certainly. And that's one. So I'm very grateful for Sonny in my life back then. I still think about all the different exercises and perspectives. I haven't forgotten any of them.
Wow. Tell us about an exercise.
I learned about, it's a bit of a long story, but I'll try and sort of keep it short. I was never as good around the connecting part. I was always very clear about wanting to get things done. And Sonny worked on me with this exercise called the name game about how to really understand people in a more sort of layered basis. And so part of the name game for me over a number of months working with him was when I was traveling, going to hotels or what I do in my normal work rhythms was actually get to know people. And so whether it be people at a front counter, treat them as humans.
Wow.
And so, you see the name badge. So the name game was understand people who have name badges and actually ask them about their day or ask them, something interesting about their life and see the reactions that you get. Their eyes light up, the facial expressions. So I've never forgotten that. And I've used that with some of my mentees to this day and certainly in some coaching scenarios.
So tell me more. I'm fascinated. So the name game was about remembering the names. It was about using the name in the conversation to get deeper into the conversation with those people?
More about the connection.
Yes.
Yeah. So definitely using the name because I call that, the cheats way of, going to different places where you don't know someone as strangers is being able to make a connection and how to make people feel. And and that was really doing it in a very authentic way about, people who are in roles where, for example, he set it up for me and said, think of it, you've been traveling, you go to a destination somewhere. At the end of your long day, you go to a hotel, you're tired, you've had a long day, you just want to check into your hotel, get your key and move on. But there's someone at the end of that conversation who is wearing that frustration, tiredness, lack of patience. So for me, it learned a little more about how to connect with people, patience. So it was one of the early, I think, exercises and things I've never forgotten about more around connection with humans. And that's really helped me to this day, where I've imparted, I think, a bit of that knowledge onto, people I've worked with, mentees, in that context.
And if I go back to you saying that Sunny really helped you hone in on what you were great at to actually be very purposeful in your career.
Yeah.
How did the name game help with that purposeful progress in your career?
Yeah, that's been a really big backbone for me, because it's as simple of things like, let's bring that into the current day office, is actually connecting with all of your team. So moving around the office, having a one-to-one relationship with all of the staff, not just people that report to you or sit on your floor. It's actually being able to get around the building and talk to people who you don't have a necessary work connection with.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's a culture building piece. And if we have everyone doing that, I think that lays great foundations for our culture.
That's fantastic. So what I'm hearing is really about teaching you or having the habit to connect deeply with every single person that you meet in your path. And I can't help but think that building a connection obviously builds that trust, and then it establishes you as that natural leader. What's the connection with leadership here?
There's a massive connection with leadership. I think between mentoring and leadership, there is a huge crossover, and they live together. And I think part of my role as a leader in our business today is to also mentor our talent coming through. And so it plays a really big role in my day-to-day. And certainly you talked around purpose. It is a big purpose of mine, because I want to help build the foundations of a great business where I am today, and the culture and the values. And so part of that is that extending your mentoring capability or skill within and throughout the business. So it plays a really big role. And I think, but those foundations are developed a long time ago. And as you go, they're like building blocks.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have seen myself as a great mentor along the way, but I've certainly developed my skill in many ways. And my mentoring is very different. I mean, if we're mentoring, we do it in our own way. And so I also find I've got a great fascination with mentees.
So I want to go back. So I'm hearing that you're using that deep connection and really listening and understanding the deeper layers for your for the people that you connect with. But I want to go back to this sort of the early days when you started doing this. Do you remember finding out something incredible or surprising about people when you started asking those deeper questions, whether at the sort of the hotel concierge or at the coffee machine with someone in the organization? What do you find out from people when you start really connecting with them through that name game?
Yeah, so you go back to the very start of the name game, and I think, yes, you absolutely do unlock something in people when you start to connect with them on a deeper level. Now, you're not getting into the full personal aspects of their life. However, I've also found early days in my mentoring, you talk around that surprise, when I started to become a lot more curious with people and mentees around questions of real interest to them, and then finding ourselves in conversations, around their work or their career that were, on a much deeper level versus where do you want to be in 5 years' time and where do you see yourself, but actually really talking to them about what are the struggles that you've had in your career or how are you trying to find your way to the next move, or I'm stuck in a cul-de-sac of my career type question. And when you can actually use that, the deeper connection to unlock some of those questions, I found some real magic happens in some of those conversations, certainly, and not all the time, but certainly in some conversations I've had some quite profound insights for myself as well.
So it sounds like that the impact that Sunny had on you was to unlock this confidence and interest, I guess, in really going deeper into people's lives and therefore making them feel comfortable. And I guess it helps a lot in sales and in leadership today. And of course, in mentoring. Can you tell me some of the questions that have unlocked people at a really deep level, either in your role as a mentor or in your day-to-day as a salesperson?
That's a great question. I wish I had a list of those unbelievable questions at hand, because they sometimes stumble across you as you are in the middle of a conversation.
Yes,
and so they're quite organic.
That's okay.
But I reflect back now and I think it's very much in that space where you're holding the tension quite tightly with a mentee.
Okay.
And then, that simple question can unlock something where you just see the free flow of conversation. For example, you can feel that something else is happening for the mentee as you have a conversation about a particular topic. And then it might be a question around, is that really how you feel? Is there something else? And so I think asking them to explore further their own thinking and perspective, I've often found that you go then again to the next level, or you completely unlock, I'll call it the room next door, where they haven't really wanted to go into or explore. And then that one question can then really tip them over, because I think if you've built enough trust and a foundation in that conversation, I think that the mentees will be willing to go there. And I found that you talked around the drinks industry mentoring program, which, by the way, has been, I think, unbelievable for me in terms of my mentor development. I have found in those conversations that there are some amazing and profound perspectives that really came to the surface for the mentees, but also for myself. I think I learned so much about mentoring through that program and process over many, many years.
Well, we certainly have been able to grow the program thanks to people like you, people who trusted the process, people who gave so generously hours and hours of their time in workshops, sometimes attending the workshops several times with different mentees and having to be playing the game, even though you knew the content. So we are so incredibly grateful on behalf of all the mentees who have participated in this program and continue to do so, because you have been the catalyst of this program, and then therefore others have trusted us to continue to facilitate this program. But Jeff, let's go back to what you were saying, because that's really fascinating. I want to hear more. So you're saying when you're in that mentoring relationship and you've used that in other contexts, now you're using it a lot, I guess, as a leader and as a mentor, you're really listening and watching so that you ask a question that helps the person go to the room next door. You said almost like when you feel that the person's not quite responding to the previous question, you ask. Tell me more about that. How have you learned this skill? How are you practicing it? What are you seeing of the impact? There are 3 questions in one, but go for it. Tell us more. I want to hear.
I'll try. Yes, again, that's an interesting one. I've had experience with mentees through my time where I feel like we're dancing around a topic, and sometimes it's quite circular in the conversation. And so trying to unlock that, because, with observation and also just with curiosity. And I found that's one of the key skills I find I've developed, is the intuition to keep asking questions, maybe in a different frame, or frame up the question quite differently.
Yes.
And allowing the mentee to explore for themselves and have their own perspective. And so within that, helping them unlock the next room is actually create that psychological safety, the environment for that, and allow the conversation to go where it needs to go instead of forcing it. And that's probably one of the mistakes I made early on, was trying to force an outcome, trying to get to a conclusion because I was so desperate to help. But back to that.
Okay. That's just, you're packing so much into this. I think this is critical. I want to hold that. So creating the psychological safety to allow the person to go where they need to go to unlock their own answers.
Yep.
But you said in the past, you may not have actually allowed that questioning or that time to really explore because you were in a rush to help.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that mistake that sometimes as really devoted mentors we make.
Yeah. I think that's one of the key mistakes that certainly I made early on. When you're when you're finding your way as a mentor and you're trying to understand who you are, you're a leader. You've had this great fortune of either someone asking you to mentor them, which is a great honor, or you've been paired with someone, whether it be through a program. I found early on that my willingness to help sometimes was overwhelming for the mentee around that desire to find an outcome, a solution, a fix, trying to find somewhere where they feel like I've been a major help.
Yeah.
And my thinking's really evolved over the years now where I'm not as intent on trying to find an outcome. I'm actually just interested in having a conversation with them to help them explore their own perspectives. And I'm really okay now with not having a conclusion. And so that was hard for me at the start as a salesperson. It's like that results-driven focus. So it was hard. You want to deliver. You want to help someone. You want to feel like that you've had a major impact on them.
Oh, I love this. Yes. As a mentor, you want to feel that you've had a major impact. You want to deliver.
Yes.
That burden actually prevents you from going where the mentee needs to go.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it's a little selfish, in the kindest way, because it becomes about you and not about the mentee. And I've had to, and I've evolved that over the years where I've made mistakes with different mentees and some where I've got it right, where I've been effective. And as I reflect back, I think about when was I most effective? And those are the conversations, and those mentoring sessions where I've allowed conversation to flow and probably being so much more present.
Yes.
In the, like we're doing now, we're having a conversation, we're going with the conversation where, if there's something really interesting, I stay on that point for a little bit because there's something there.
You feel the energy.
You feel the energy, yeah. You feel the magic in that space. And so I allow to sort of have a bit of a rest stop there. And if there's nothing there, then we move on and that's okay. And so, but those mistakes have helped to form my approach now around just setting it up so that it's okay to not get to a resolution. But what you might come away with is a bit more perspective. And that's equally good too.
Now, what if the mentee wants a resolution? When the mentee comes and says, I want you to give me the answer. Often mentors, that's when it sort of, primes even more that sense of I need to be helpful, I need to deliver. How do you manage those situations when the mentee is desperate for an answer?
I'll give you an example of when I was a mentee with a mentor in my career.
Yes.
And I'll spin it the other way around.
Yes.
A second mentor that I've had in my career is Tim Gill, and I still work with Tim to this day. He's still a mentor of mine, and he's been very influential in my. Hey Tim, if you're out there, I'll send you a copy. And so Tim, when I was at Pernod Ricard and I felt like I was at a bit of a crossroads or a fork around, I wasn't sure what to do and where to go next and what to do. And I think talking to Tim, as part of a mentor relationship around, helped me to understand what do I do next. I wanted the quick answer.
Yes. I want someone to validate me, to tell me what to do.
Yeah, very much so. And Tim, in his work with me, is an unbelievable mentor, like one of the best I've seen. He's like my room full of mirrors. And so he helped me to understand, instead of rushing into decisions, to reflect on all the wonderful things that I have right now in front of me, not just my career. But it's also okay if you don't get to the next milestone the way that you want. Okay. And so to be okay with that, because there's so much more to be grateful for. And so he works a lot in this gratitude space, joy. I still work with him today on high-performing teams because he's got a real knack for that to help unlock high performance in teams, which is a great passion of mine. But as a mentee, he, over an extended period, he helped me to just reflect about the fact that my journey didn't have to be linear. I could take a few left and right turns, and we explored many different perspectives of what my career looked like for me. So if I flip that now on its head, as a mentor, a mentee coming and asking for a fix is okay. I think it's how we actually nurture the relationship and how we actually just work with them to understand that's the intent, and for you to find your resolution. And I find that's not my job in the mentoring relationship. My job is to be that room of mirrors, seek perspective, help them explore alternatives. But ultimately, I think a good mentor-mentee relationship that I've experienced is the mentee coming to those conclusions themselves.
Yeah, brilliant. I love the analogy of the room full of mirrors. So they come for an answer and you give them mirrors.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what they get is so much deeper. I completely understand the analogy of the room full of mirrors. Can you tell us a little bit more for perhaps the mentors who are listening, who are still eager and say, well, but I need to give the answer. How do you use this vision or the image of the room full of mirrors when you're in the middle of that conversation and someone's looking for an answer?
Yeah, simply, it's a sexy way of saying, multiple perspective.
Yes.
Instead of looking at yourself or looking at one issue or topic front on and seeing what you see, then I think that room full of mirrors approach is explore all the perspectives around you that you can't see, the things that might be in your blind spot. And so I think the ability as a mentor to play that role and ask for perspective, and then seek permission for the mentee to explore different areas. And sometimes you may not get there. And that's happened for me in the past where, I've certainly had mentoring relationships that, didn't get the best outcome, and I've learned from that. I've also had that opportunity where I've explored multiple perspectives and multiple layers with a mentee where they've ended up coming to wonderful outcomes for themselves in career advancement or personal life choices as well. So, and I find being able to just look at the perspectives with them that are multi-layered. And so I like the room full of mirrors because it's a really cool visual analogy of looking at everything all upside down around blind spots included.
Well, it's fantastic. You're giving us so many really nuggets of illustrative reminders of what great mentoring is. So first of all, what I'm hearing from you, from Sunny, perhaps, is the name game. So really connect with that person, develop that trust, make them feel seen and heard and acknowledged, and understand what's going on for them.
Absolutely.
And then from Tim, the room full of mirrors, where it's about holding up the mirror to help them see a different perspectives, because that perspective taking is what helps them grow and find their own answers.
Absolutely. Yep, the two key ones. And the beauty of that is they do it so organically and so seamlessly. If I asked Tim now, he might say, well, really? That's amazing. But for me as a mentee, that's how I perceive him.
Yes.
He's, all class in being able to just help you feel really comfortable, but also to make you feel a bit uncomfortable at the same time. And I think that's a really put you into a space, of, again, psychological safety. Like I feel with Tim, I can share with him, my doubts, my fears from a work perspective. And so we've now, formed a much more personal relationship over the years where it's just built on such high trust.
Mm-hmm. So that perspective taking, that mirror holding, asking the difficult question, that's what takes you in a slight discomfort zone. Where does the benefit come from discomfort? Tell me about perhaps moments where as a mentor or as a mentee, you have been taking or you've been taken or you've taken someone to that area of discomfort. What comes out of this?
The first thing that comes to mind is the learning. I think in my experience, and I think there's probably a lot of facts available to show that we learn the most when we're most uncomfortable. And so if we're in a space of high comfort, there may not be the same level of learning. And so I find with mentees and mentoring being in a very uncomfortable space, again, as long as it's psychologically safe, I find there's unbelievable learning that comes to the surface for that. And that's where the growth happens. So two things out of that are being uncomfortable, you learn, and then out of learning comes growth. And then obviously, that's a great thing, a great benefit for the mentee. What comes out of that is growth for the mentor too. I think, you get the payoff, so what's in it for the mentor is like we get to have these awesome conversations and help to guide the mentee along their journey. But I also find there's that real warmth of buzz around being part of something. And so the payoff for us, or the high that you get from mentoring, you get to learn and grow along with the mentees as well.
Yeah, yeah. Have you been in situations, can you give us an example of when you have unlocked something for someone really important by holding up that mirror, by asking that different perspective or asking a question that took them out of that comfort zone?
Yes, very much so. And this is a more of an unorthodox outcome that I didn't expect, but when I reflect on it,
Yes.
I was working with a mentee a few years ago now in a capacity where their organisation had asked me to work with this particular individual, and the relationship took a long time to establish between myself and the mentee, so the chemistry wasn't there immediately, but we established just through the rhythms of working and some structured approach to our mentoring, I would say quite a strong foundational relationship.
Yeah.
And the topic we were working on was really around their role in their business. And, there was a bit of a struggle, I think, for the mentee and the business at that time. So if I fast forward through all of the conversations and all of the areas that we explored, that mentee ended up leaving the business. Now, this is a good news story. Normally you'd say, okay, that's not the intended outcome for mentoring. But what we did do was, through the exploration of different topics and areas and where the mentee was at with their career, what we also explored with the organisation, which I thought was quite powerful, was the opportunity to do that. Because what we ended up with in the conversation and the room of mirrors was the mentee came to a conclusion, I think without speaking on their behalf, that they wanted to move in a different path. And so the struggle with them wasn't so much about my career in this business, it was, do I want to be here?
Yes, okay.
And so I still think done the right way, that helping the mentee first, and then we sought permission, and so I sought permission with the business to explore what that looked like for the mentee, on what exit would look like, etc.
Yes.
Now, that was never the intended start of that partnership, but what I was very grateful for was the organisation gave me that permission to work with the mentee in that way.
Do you think the mentee knew deep down at one point that was the best outcome for them but didn't want to see it? Or did you completely help them unlock that?
I can't say, Maud. I don't know. I think intuitively I would say it might have been there, but they just didn't want to didn't want to walk into the room next door.
Yes.
That those feelings of unease or anxiety that were clearly there throughout our conversations, they weren't really addressing that particular issue. And I think when you get to the heart of the matter, when we had, I think one of our sessions, we landed on that, what would a different world look like for you outside this business? That's when conversations started to play out.
Yeah.
And we then, I started to see the body language of this individual about, it was almost an excitement around, oh, wow, they could start to picture about what it might look like. We need to be quite careful there, because I was assigned that role with the organisation. So I was very mindful of my role and my obligations to the mentee, but also the organisation. So that was a tricky one, which I felt like there was a great outcome in the end, though.
Yes.
And the organisation felt the same.
Of course, because when they invest in mentees, it's for the benefit of that person, but also you don't want to keep someone who's not happy in a role, do we?
Yes,
no one
absolutely.
does. But it sounds like with the room of mirrors, you're taking them to that next room, which perhaps they weren't prepared to go to, but you felt that that's where they needed to go, and you helped them go to that.
Yes, the opportunity presented that. I think, again, being very careful about making assumptions of what they need to do.
Yes.
The opportunity, I think, presented, and I took the opportunity to explore that with them.
I'm fascinated with your illustrative sort of advice to other mentors. I love it. And I'm going to ask one last question before we move on to other topics. But you just said that you have to be really listening and be careful of the questions you ask, because it's almost as if you have to choose which mirror you're going to use, which perspective are you going to challenge, so that you take them to that room next door, that different level of awareness and consciousness that really unlocks the answers for them. If I summarize everything you told us, that's what I'm hearing. Now, I find that the most difficult thing to do, though, for the mentor is to decide how you ask the question. Which question do you ask? Because when you ask those questions, you unlock, or you sort of open different areas of, or different rooms, really, in that perspective taking. How do you choose the right question when you're in the moment with your mentee? How do you choose the right question to ask that will unlock the right thing for them?
Another good one, and something for me as a mentor, and maybe for those aspiring mentors out there, is don't be so worried about getting the question right. Okay. So coming back to that, you'll get there. I think if you practice really deep listening and be really in the moment and actively listen, and then stay on that, and then just be curious, the simple what, where, when, how, why. Yeah. Why is that important to you? What did that mean for you? Because I think you can't ask a bad question if there's great intent. You may not get the answer, or you may be a little off center. What I found interesting, though, is ask another question. Yeah. And so that's the beauty of mentoring, is that, as long as you create the right boundaries and structure, and you've got an environment of psychological safety, you can explore different things, and you may be asking questions that don't have an end point or don't really bring you a lot of insight. Yeah. What I do find is that they can sometimes be good building blocks to the key question, the big aha moment. Yes. And then you'll unlock that and you'll think, okay, we got there. And so it's okay. I would say, so for me now, I don't sweat trying to think of the list of questions or what I've got to ask. I actually think about the person in front of me around where are they at? What's going on for them? That's an interesting observation. And so if you find yourself in that moment, the right questions come to the surface, I think.
What an amazing sharing of experience as a mentor, Jeff. I know that our listeners, and particularly the new mentors, are going to really love hearing about those lessons. What do you think? I mean, obviously, the way that you've described mentoring today with us is very much, aligned to my philosophy of mentoring. But what do you think are the misconceptions in today's world about mentoring that doesn't necessarily deliver what you've described?
The misconceptions for me are that we sometimes wear mentoring as a badge of honor and we forget to do the hard work around it. Yes. So the commitment, right? Yes. So it's great to have, I'm mentoring such and such, or I'm, being labeled as a mentor, I think is a great honor. Yes. Yeah. A lot of hard work has to come with it, and commitment, like the commitment of your time. And so I think the misconception is that now that you think if you're a mentor and you can just catch up and keep it very casual, I don't find I've had the best outcomes. I mean, they're coffee catch-ups or building relationships. I have found that having a structured approach to your mentoring, being objective focused, but being okay with where it might go. And, again, like I said previously, not having an outcome is okay. Mm. So I found that that's one of the key areas around all the misconceptions. I've also found one of the big ones is making assumptions early on. Mm-hmm. I think that can derail you quite quickly around, the mentees come to me for this, I'm going to help solve that. Yeah. And so it's a limiting, limits the potential of the relationship. And so I find now that as mentors, where we feel like we've got to have all these answers, we've got experience and knowledge that we want to impart. And so we get on that journey and we start imparting, and we forget to listen. We forget
the room of mirrors.
That's right. So that's really important, is to just bring it back and almost be okay to think, okay, I'm, act like I know nothing, and just like we're doing now, have a conversation that actually finds itself in a really interesting place. Yeah.
Act like you know nothing. Don't look for the satisfying reward of adding value by giving answers, because that's what takes you away from the deep listening and the perspective taking and the open questions and feeling where the person needs to go rather than trying to take them there.
Yeah, very much agree. And the final one, Maud, is I think forcing it. That's a big one. I think mentoring is the danger in that is trying to force something that's not there, an outcome, a conversation, forcing a perspective on someone that you think is right, and then sometimes you can be completely wrong. So I think forcing it is always a big risk in the mentoring partnership as well.
Which is why you really want to ask questions and only ask questions.
That's right.
Now, one of the last topics we wanted to explore together was about the impact of mentoring in an organizational context.
Yeah.
How should organizations think about mentoring? What impact does it have on the culture? Tell us a little bit about perhaps currently the culture at Lindt.
The culture at Lindt, I joined Lindt 2.5 years ago, and the culture is very people-oriented, and a lot of organizations are like that. I would say they're very focused on achievement base, and that's something that really resonates for me. As a global business, but locally, I find that they're very achievement-focused. And I would say some of the key words I would use is highly collaborative. So, very focused on that. What I also find now, which I'm excited by, is the business is trying to move into this high-performance space. And so we're wrestling with that notion about how we actually, skill up all of our teams across the business, how we build capability. But importantly, how do we actually build leadership through the business? And then how do we make sure that we have mentors that are skilled to be able to guide our teams, through that journey? Because it's a very difficult environment, wherever you look right now.
Yes,
so
it's a difficult context. And so are you saying that leaders who are mentors get high performance?
Not always. I think that leaders who bring in mentorship as part of their toolkit in leading the business would have a higher chance of success. There's a lot more elements to that. Good strategy, execution, etc. So that alone, not enough. And it's got to be underpinned by a great culture and the values of the business. They've got to be really your guiding lights and beacons along the way. And so I think we're working really hard at Lindt now to do that. And that's, I would say, in development or evolution mode, which is a completely exciting transformation for our business. I think the opportunity for us is to step up or level up as leaders, and certainly bring mentoring as a daily occurrence in our business, which today it's not, admittedly. There's more to be done.
Yeah. So mentoring as a daily occurrence in your leadership day-to-day, in your leadership role.
Absolutely.
Yes, getting to that level of trust where you can help someone have the psychological safety to be comfortable, to be perspective-taking.
Yeah, and like the discussion we've had today, we've got very highly capable leaders across our business. Our executive team and our leadership group, I think, or have all the hallmarks and capability to do that. And it's just the education or the opportunity or the structure, something that obviously that through Serendis that you provide, how to actually do that effectively. And that's something that we've got to embark on as well.
Jeff, that's your ability to illustrate the different cornerstones of a great mentoring conversation has been amazing. So I'm so excited for our listeners to listen to those nuggets of advice. Are you ready for the Fast Five?
Bring the Fast Five on.
The biggest myth about mentoring is?
Forcing an outcome that will be successful.
A leadership quality you believe mentoring strengthens better than any other formal training?
Ooh, curiosity.
Oh, yes. Love that one. The most common mistake organizations make when designing mentoring programs?
They underestimate the time and the work involved to bring it to life, and then they don't put structure to it.
A book, an article, a research at the moment that you think every leader should read?
Oh, that's a difficult one. There's so many. I couldn't name one. I think it's horses for horses. I think whatever resonates for you. The one that I liked really was the resident leader for me. So
A resident leader.
The resident leader.
Yeah.
And then I also use a lot the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Oh, yes.
Some of the work that's done around, I
Patrick
believe.
Lencioni.
That's right, Lencioni. If anyone I look at, it's probably Lencioni's work.
Yes.
Again, I'm not huge on models, but I find that to me is one that I find is great for teams.
So can you finish this sentence? The future of leadership depends on?
Us.
Us! Love it. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I absolutely loved the name game, the room full of mirrors, and taking you to the next room. What a great illustration of what mentoring can deliver. Thank you so
Maud.
much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Mentoring Unlocked. This podcast is powered by MentorKey, the platform designed to make mentoring impactful. If this episode unlocked inspiration within you, please follow, share, or leave us a review.